And hello, good people of the internet. It is I, Tommy Kelly. This is Adventures Mubu, and welcome once again to the monthly question and answer video vlog podcast, where people on Patreon and Discord send me in some questions and I answer them to the best of my ability and current understanding, with the caveat that I can change my mind at any time in the future. It's kind of a bit of an annoying morning today. I came down to one of the spots where I normally go. And it's a lovely little place down beside the river. You've probably seen it in a load of vlogs, but it's all kind of now barriered off. The walk, which I assumed was a public walk, is now not. And so I had to kind of cut across a field or a golf course to get to my place get to here. So perhaps this will be the last time I do videos here, which is quite sad because I enjoyed coming here. Anyway, such is life. No, nothing lasts forever. I got my copy of the 40 Servants, Grimoire, the second edition, non-proof. Looks great, I'm very happy with it. There's a conclusion of a couple of extra pictures than I was in the proof. There's the Fixo one as well. Yeah, just wanted to show you. Very happy. The hardback should be coming tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. Now, let's get on to... I thought I seen someone behind me. I've been watching loads of ghost hunting videos, so yeah, I keep seeing... Did you see it in the background? So let's get into this anyway. Ralph. From an occult perspective, what parts of the body would you recommend to paint the sigils of the 40 servants with a suitable marker, colour invisible with a UV marker, for example, to wear them on the body for a while? Is it a good idea at all? Yeah, I think it's a good idea if it's something that you find, you gravitate towards. Some people get them tattooed on the body, which is interesting. I don't think I would. Well, depends on what you're getting tattooed. You have to make sure that you really want that energy around forever, which, if it's something like protection or good fortune, why wouldn't you, I suppose? But you have the kind of notion then with the, the temporary marker to put it on and just have it working over a day or a number of days if you decide not to wash yourself. For the healing one, you could probably put it in your hand if you're doing like some sort of energy healing, the healer symbol. Protection over your heart, possibly, if you want to be protected from different, from love, catastrophes, or from you having your heart broken. Yeah, I would. Yeah, so you see a lot of people put them on the wrists, on the pulse points and stuff like that. So yeah, try them out. It's definitely not going to do anything detrimental to you. Max, what are your thoughts around magic as a profession? Systems such as the AA prohibit practitioners from charging for their services. In Tibetan Buddhism, money changes hands often. What benefits and what risks arise from introducing payments? Would you consider yourself a professional magician? Spelled with a K. It's always awkward, isn't it? Magician with a K. I kind of think I'm okay with people charging for whatever they want, because you're giving your energy, you're giving your time. You have the most precious thing you have is your time, and so I don't have any problem with people charging for anything, because no one's under any obligation to actually pay for it. The problems that I could see coming into it is, how can you guarantee something, from an actual a sales point of view or whatever. Like, you can only kind of sell it as entertainment, which is, even the Grimoire of 40 Servants, I put a new kind of warning at the beginning of it, which is again that, this should be considered as entertainment rather than, because magic and divination, all that's not scientifically valid, really. And it's kind of just to keep yourself from a legal point of view safe, that you're not promising anyone, you're not saying that this will definitely happen. And as we all know, magic doesn't work all the time, and divination certainly doesn't work all the time. So that would be my kind of thing. If you're charging people for doing magic for them and it doesn't happen, do they get their money back? Or are you charging people for your time with no kind of guarantee that it's going to work? So I don't know, just something I don't feel comfortable with doing myself. As a rule, I do not do magic for other people. I'll tell you how to do magic for yourself, I'll point you in the right direction, but I don't do magic for other people. For all of those reasons, because number one, I don't want to do it, if they're under feeling a kind of a promise that it's going to work. Magic doesn't work for me all the time. Why would it? It would seem less likely to work if I did it for someone else, with all of that kind of extra bits and pieces that would be involved in all of that and all the different variables. Also don't want to be part of the karma. If you're doing coursework, which I don't really do coursework anyway, I'd rather do banishings, but you get involved in the karma of the situation. And I have enough of my own things to be dealing with. I don't have time anyway to be doing other stuff for people. But I suppose, strictly speaking, you could say that divination is magic, and I do that for other people. I don't consider it in the same way, and I very rarely do it for other people anyway, other than the monthly divinations. I did the daily readings, but they're more just for general things, not for a specific person, and I'm not charging for them. Do I consider myself a professional magician? Absolutely not. I don't do magic for people. I don't charge to do magic for people. I've seen myself, I'm an artist, musician, writer, sometimes magician. Not always, not all. Catherine, or Katrina. If you're using a servant for a long-term, ongoing use, do you thank or reward them periodically through it? Like, there's not necessarily a known or predetermined endpoint for what I'm asking them to do, so I feel I need to keep checking in. What I've done is every couple of weeks, or whenever something has happened I could attribute to their work, I would make an offering and then ask them to keep working in the same vein. Is this reasonable? And if so, what kind of schedule would be best? As usual, I'm almost certainly overthinking it. Yeah, I think that's fine. Ongoing stuff, I did daily offerings to the general 40 servants, just light a candle. Anything that I was doing over a long period of time, I would tend to do a daily offering for it, even if that's for a month, 2 months, whatever. But if it's not something that's, I've an altar that I use every day anyway, so it's easy for me, and it's in my office and it's behind me, and it's, you know, so I can look after it if there's candles or whatever, or incense is burning. But yeah, just check in periodically. Just talk to them. I talk to them like the people who are in the room with me. So just explain what that you're feeling. Is this right? Is this wrong? I'm not really sure, and see if you get any clarity. But yeah, if it feels right, then it's right. Mostly, but there's provisions with that as well. You know, once you're not kind of shying away from doing something that you just don't want to do because it's hassle. But if it feels right, then that's mostly a good way to judge if something is correct for you or not. Friend of a friend. Do you have any recommendations for a person who feels the magical path has stalled out? Take a break. Stop reading all the books. Stop doing the magic. Stop watching the videos. Unsubscribe to everyone on YouTube who has anything to do with magic or spirituality, or just don't go to YouTube. Stop listening to the podcasts. All of it. Just take a break. Stop thinking about it. And come back to it in a while. I ended up doing that a number of years ago, particularly after I left college, and which was I did holistic health studies, so I was very embedded in kind of spirituality and new aginess and all this kind of stuff. And I just came to, at the end of it, I didn't care about any of it. And there was a documentary I watched, a BBC thing, where I was talking about healing, and it just kind of poo-pooed the whole idea, and had good kind of, you know, that it was all in the head, it was all psychosomatic, nothing to it. And I just went, I've had enough. I just don't want to think about it for a while. And then a few years later, I came back, a lot more clearer than it was. So if you were finding that it's stalled, take a break. If you don't want to take a break, do something completely different. Change your meditation practice. If you're doing a concentration practice, do some sort of surrender practice or some sort of beloved or devotional practice. If you're mad into Wicca, hang out with some Christians for a while. Do something radically different, and that may open up a door into something else. Like, because when we're in very compartmentalized things, like chaos magic or Telema or, I don't know, Orthodox Christianity, whatever it is, so within that it can be sometimes hard to progress, because it's, you know, it's a closed loop and it's a bubble. But when you go outside and look at something else, it'll inform the thing that you're, like, you come back then to your Orthodox Christianity and you'll have a clearer understanding. It's like when you're doing art and you're really only into painting, that if you go off and then do some sculpture or learn a bit about sculpture, when you come back to the painting, you have a completely new understanding of the medium that you were originally in, because of what you were exposed to during sculpture that you wouldn't have been exposed to ever just doing painting. Grayson, what are your thoughts on self-deprivation versus self-indulgence, things like sex, drugs, etc., as it relates to spiritual practice? Well, there is any number of paths that would be aesthetic, and any number of paths that would be hedonistic or indulgent. Church of Satan, for example, would have a very much a hedonistic, indulgent path, where, you know, they would say you should indulge all of your fantasies, your passions, or whatever. For in that you become fully formed, fully human, express your animalistic nature, your materialism, all of that, you know, to the point where I suppose there is a kind of a sense of might is right too. and all the problems that kind of go with that. So that there is, and people find great solace in that, and that can be a great way to break you out of a restrictive type of place where you might have been, where a lot of them were, coming from like a kind of Christian background, which is very restrictive in many ways. You know, not quite aesthetic, but it's quite restrictive. So that was, you know, one way of getting out of that. But I think then ultimately, you know, the pendulum will swing or whatever. So if you've so much in one direction and then you swing it in the other direction, ultimately you have to probably aim for somewhere in the middle. Some guy in India 2,500 years ago had this idea where he spent so much of his life, it's good to my Buddha in case people don't know, as Siddhartha, he spent so much of life, 30 years of his life, in deep indulgence, his whim, every need met, all the things he ever wanted. Found that unsatisfactory. Well, he's seen that it wasn't going to last, and then he went as an ascetic, and he didn't eat, and he just, you know, became part of that complete opposite kind of thing, lack of indulgence. And ultimately he found that the way forward would be through somewhere in the middle kind of path. So I think they're quite helpful, those type of things, like the carnal and the chaste from the 40 Servants, where if you've swung too much to one side, that to balance it, you can go completely to the other, and it kind of, the vibration of it ultimately ends somewhere in the middle. So I'd say, yeah, do it if it feels, if you're being stifled in one area, or cut back if you think you're too much overindulgent. But I don't think personally that a hedonistic path or an aesthetic path on its own for eternity is probably going to get you to the place that you want to be. Possibly. Mindfulness. Bit of a multi-part question, but you saw some of the debate that broke out earlier, just a couple of weeks ago, because we have a channel on the Discord that you can just pop in a question for me anytime, and I'll answer it in the next video. Regarding the efficacy of group magical workings for large-scale events. This was around Hex Putin and all of that kind of stuff, so it's the beginning of the war. And general opinion on the whole thoughts and prayers as a response to such circumstance outside of your control. What are your current beliefs and approaches to such things? I am not powerful enough to stop Putin in a magical way. I don't know anyone who is. I also don't know anyone in a group effort who's ever succeeded in doing something quite like that. There is talk of Dion Fortune doing something at the end of World War II, much higher adept than I am. And it clearly didn't work in the bind Trump stuff, at least not in the way that it was, you know, purported or wanted to do. He still got his term, he still managed to do all what he wanted to do that the people who were trying to bind him didn't. Does that mean you shouldn't try it? I don't think so. I think you should try it if it's something that is a drive within you to want to try it, because at least it's doing something, I suppose. It's allowing you, at the very least, to feel that you have some say in world events. Regards to thoughts and prayers, the thoughts element of it I think is quite good, and can be quite good, because if you keep retaining some of these things, some of these sufferings in your thoughts, and that becomes part of the greater thoughts of the general public or public opinion or whatever, then it's more likely as an overall kind of movement that something will be done. It's like, look at something like Ukraine, where it has captivated our thoughts. There seems to be a lessening of it, particularly here in Ireland, and it's not being talked about. It's, you don't see the headlines on Reddit. It's, you know, it used to be the top 20 on or all was Ukraine. Now it's like one or two, and even the big posts in Ukraine, the actual subreddit itself, aren't getting it to the main page. So there is kind of a slowdown in that. But while it was all in our thoughts, there was an awful lot of things that would happen. Whereas if it wasn't, there wouldn't be a momentum, there wouldn't be a kind of a force behind it, there wouldn't be a push that would necessarily lead to some sort of outcome, you know, that it would just be, in a sense, forgotten. And from a magical point of view, if you want, and there is the idea that gods only exist if you think about them, right? Okay, that may or not be true. I'm not sure it is true. But the usefulness of it, you know, if we forget about them, then is their presence ever felt? So I think keeping people in our thoughts, keeping people in our news feeds, suffering people, and the opposing thing of keeping happiness and good events in our thoughts, so that we, you know, just fall for thinking that the world is, you know, just a depressive place, but that it means that eventually something will happen. Whereas if they're not in our thoughts, that you know, there's something in the momentum of a lot of people having it in, you know, in the public opinion or the public kind of general zeitgeist that allows for things to change and allows for movement to happen. Me personally, thinking about it, does it change anything? It could in a micro level rather than a macro level, where it could affect my life. For instance, the Ukraine thing and seeing the suffering and how kind of easy life can be taken away from you and how everything can be taken away from you, your family, whatever, has really, as the beginning of the pandemic did for me, really made me feel grateful for what I have. And my relationship with my son, while it was fantastic, has become even deeper and more appreciative, and lots more hugs, lots more kisses, lots more telling him I love him, telling him what I think of him. Because, time is fleeting and we are definitely all going to die. So it is all going to go away at some point. So today it's the people in the Ukraine, tomorrow it could be us, and it will be us someday. And so kind of coming face to face with that mortality, was very scary and not nice, can put a lot of things in perspective. Prayer's element of it, I'm not sure. There's some talk about that praying for sick people, even when they don't know, seems to help with the recovery. There's also some talk that it doesn't, and there's studies are saying different things. Lynn McTaggart does some stuff on that. I did read it a few years ago. I can't really remember statistics. It seemed quite convincing at the time, but I read stuff subsequently that kind of dismisses the notion. So I would put the thoughts and prayers thing as part of keeping things in our mind, keeping them relevant, keeping them moving, rather than forgotten. Emilio, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? That I'm right about everything and have never been wrong in an argument. But to give you a non-stupid answer, I think one of the things I've noticed recently is that there's an awful lot, and not all occultists, but a trend in occultism, particularly in Western occultism, to hate Western culture and to kind of have a glee or satisfaction in it falling apart, and that as if it was all a mistake in the first place and it was something that was bad that happened, that it was an error. Whereas I certainly don't think that. I have a high regard for Western culture. Not saying it's perfect, not saying it isn't horrible in places, not saying it hasn't caused immense suffering, but an amazing art, absolutely amazing art, amazing paintings, sculpting, dance, all of these things that have come true. Amazing music, absolutely music that will bring you straight to the divine. That is just so. Music is the highest form of magic as far as I'm concerned. Some great literature, some great stories of individual courage and overcoming, great scientific progress, some great progress in general. It's like, obviously it's a Western culture. Its success and its failing is its kind of sense of wanting to progress and stuff like that. But in the sense of, if it's all a divine emanation, then so is Western culture. And to kind of say that it's wrong or was an error, to me, seems like a hangover from the age that is leaving us, the Christian age, the old era of original sin, the fall of humanity, that somehow we fucked up and we deserve to be here, and that this is all embedded in the Western kind of culture, that this is a mistake. I don't feel it's a mistake. I think it's as divine as anything else. I think there's a lot of good that has come out of it. Look, we can do much better. But so yeah, that'd be one of the things. It seems to be a lot of kind of negativity around Western culture, particularly from Westerners. And a lot of them seem to want to go back to a time that they have in their heads was so much better, so much fairer, so much, I don't know, closer to divine or whatever. Like, let's go, ancient Greece or whatever. They had slaves, let's not do that. Let's not go back to that. Or there's some sort of harkening back to Egypt or something where, essentially, the most spiritual people in the world and advanced people in the world also had slaves, just to name one thing. So, I mean, I don't know. I like Western culture. I'd be very sad when it goes, if it goes. I'm still optimistic that it will transmigrate, possibly, or it will. I do feel there's an end of an era, of an age, like. It's Pisces, is it right? We're coming into Aquarius, and so there is going to be stuff that's going, and there is thing. It's like the sun is setting, but the dawn is coming, you know, and that's both happening at the same time. The looming apocalypse and the looming awakening at both at the same time. And yeah, I don't think a lot of people agree with that. Wolf the Great, I assume you have a regular practice. Anything you want to say about them, how and why it is good? And how did you start building it up? And what advice would you have for someone that can't really get on with it? Even though there are things I want to do daily, sometimes they take much longer for me. This is sometimes the main reason I don't do them even when I remember to. Then I guess I want to do them and I just forget about them until I'm in bed and it's, oh damn, if I forgot that again. Do the daily practices get faster with time and practice? Also, what is your preferred daily practice? And what would you recommend people do as well? I spent a long while at one stage doing a really intense daily practice, so much so that I printed out the whole ritual into like a little prayer book, and it did absolutely nothing for me. So I give it up. And I didn't like do it for a couple of days or a couple of weeks. It was a sustained over months. And I know that people would say that's still not long enough, but it's about half an hour every day, prayers, adorations, offerings, all these things. And it just became a hassle and no benefit. My life didn't change in any dramatic way. I didn't feel any closer to anything. I didn't get any insight, nothing. It just felt like a wasted time. So now my daily practice is very simple and very intentional, and it's something I enjoy doing. Offerings of incenses where I offer to, if I'm not working something in particular, I offer to the divine itself, and that it infuses its divinity into the smoke of the incense, and that will perfume the room with divinity. And also, you know, smoke will go into the walls and the books and all of those type things and make the whole place eventually divine and holy. And if I am working with a particular spirit, entity or whatever, I'll make the intention of the incense to be for them and for their energy or whatever to pervade. I light a candle every day for the 40 Servants, and that's placed on top of all of the 40 Servant stuff, including the black box which has the original 40 Servants. Currently I'm lighting a candle every day for the suffering of everyone in the world that was born out of the Ukraine, but I really like the kind of Buddhist notion that if someone is going traveling, rather than you know, kind of send them a blessing about traveling, you bless all travelers. And I know it's a bit like all lives matter, but there's something a bit nicer about it, in that it's saying you can aim it specifically for the suffering in Ukraine, and everyone who suffers, because everyone who suffers is going to be encapsulated within that. I understand that could be an argument made that's a bit all lives matter type thing, but it's again intentional here. All lives matter to some extent seems to be exclusionary rather than inclusionary, even though it's ostensibly inclusionary. I light a candle for myself every day as my own light, so that I'm seen and protected and looked after, and just as a general illumination for myself, and that's in a lantern. That originally was born out of the Mergia practice, where you light a candle in the lantern for Ion. But I stole it, as a good chaos magician should, and I did it for myself. So it's an offering to myself, but to my higher self, but not including this physical thing and all of the things. And then if I'm working on something particular, I will do something a bit more, but that's every morning, incense and offerings every morning. At night, I go back over my day, where I go from the end of the night to the beginning of the night, or the beginning of the morning, backwards through the day, go over what I've done through the day as a kind of a nightly revision or look over, and that kind of clears your mind, or kind of does all the, you know, working out, does all the calculations, and kind of all the processing that, so then when you go into your dream state, you don't have to do that processing, you can get straight to the juicy big dreams. Of course, I do a meditation every day. At the minute I'm doing it's like a 3-part thing, where it's an alignment, there's a visualization, and then there's a kind of a seed thought part of it. And that's coming out of my stuff that I'm doing with the Arcane School. Yeah, so the advice is find something that works rather than something that you think you have to endure, something that you think you have to do, because you won't do it. Find something that's fun, that feels resonant with you, and go from there, rather than feeling that you have to do this big long liturgy of things that you've no interest in and don't resonate with and don't care about. And if you're going to bed, it's going, oh, I forgot to do it, then, you know, you didn't want to do it. So find something you want to do. Keep it simple. Start really simple. Light a candle every day. Light an incense every day and offer it to divinity of your choice. Or yourself. Art of poverty. How should we think about divination and its uses? Predicting the future, better understanding ourselves in the present moment, or something else entirely? I see it as advice from a friend who might have a different insight than you, not necessarily different knowledge than you, in that you can relay a story to someone over a coffee and they only have your word of the story or your side of the story, but there's something in them that can give you a different look or a different perspective on things. And also, it can't really be predictive because in the sense of as soon as you learn something, it's going to change it. Unless, of course, everything's predetermined and you're only witnessing things. But let's say, for instance, for argument, that's not the case. So if you are told that you're going to be hit by a car in a divination, you're going to be way more careful about walking out onto the road, and so it becomes way less likely. So it's probabilities, at the most you're predicting probabilities. And we can do that to a certain extent anyway, that we don't need divination to that. You know that if you go visit your mother and say a certain thing, like a political thing, or say something, you have a good idea, you can gauge what that reaction will be. You have a general kind of ability to predict the future anyway. So if you have a general idea of predicting the future, along with a different perspective on it, that steps you out of your kind of boundaries of what you would normally use to somehow predict the future, then I think that can help. I also do to say it's mostly talking about where you are at this moment, and will always be flavoured through the lens of the person doing the divination, to the point that it's really hard to objectively do a divination for yourself, unless you really, no, even if you really try hard, it's still very hard to do, in that you will be over sweet to yourself or over hostile to yourself and not see what it is. I've often done divination for myself and knew exactly what it was, only for it to reveal itself after the event. I went, no, I was really talking about it, and obviously talking about this thing. But ultimately, yeah, who knows? Yeah, maybe it's just psychology, nothing more. There's too many kind of incidences for me of being too much bang on the nose for it to be nothing. Cazalores, yeah. War, is there any magical, mystical sense to it? Depends on your perspective you want to take. I don't know is my answer. It's often feels like it's suffering for the sake of suffering, and cruelty. We're in a shitty world. It's a prison. It's a hell. All these things. You can very easily go to that. From, I suppose, a bigger perspective, if you're seeing it over the course of millennia rather than a day or an individual story, and now it can be seen as a progress. It's very hard to kind of see it as something other than just a mistake or an error or something. But if everything is an emanation of the divine, then even what feels to us like a bad thing is really good. But I don't mean that. There's no way of talking about this without kind of making something it isn't. Like, suffering is suffering. It's horrible. It's terrible. It's not really a good thing. Only we think it's suffering from our perspective. I think suffering is suffering, objectively. I think war is hell, objectively. And I think within these things, there is the possibility of growth. And I think they're happening in order for us to grow. Although from a theosophical point of view and from a lot of kind of mystical point of view or religious point of view, these things are happening in order for us to evolve into something better. And we do seem to evolve and learn through struggle greater and quicker and easier than we do through happiness and joy. It seems to be something about human nature that we learn our lessons through struggle quicker and easier. Not always, but I would have to assume that all emanations are divine, and so all of them have a divine aspect to them, even if that divine aspect is horrifying. Divine does not necessarily mean we like it or think it's good or want more of it. Love is an emanation of the divine, as is hate, even though it could be seen as the same thing. So I don't know. I struggle a lot with dukkha, a lot, and I can very easily slide into this place is, you know, I hate this place. So I have to be very careful in my mind around that. But I just trust in the bigger picture and trust that maybe there's something going on that I can't be aware of without pretending it's not happening. You know, that's very important. It's not to whitewash it. It's not to kind of say, oh, it's not really that bad, or they're all NPCs, or there's something happening. It's really, you know, that they chose this on some level. None of that new age bullshit. Suffering is suffering. People are suffering. It's horrible. It's terrible. It's a disaster. There is a possibility of growth from it, but if you then decide that it's happening in order to grow, what does that say about creation? And it might be true, but just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not true. But there's huge implication in that I dislike it. Electro Wizard, what do you do when your life falls apart? And then there's a follow-up from Conjecture Kayfabe, to add to the above, what should you do when aspects of your life are seemingly falling apart and you know you should be somewhat bothered, if not completely panicked by it, and yet you feel apathetic to the whole situation? The second part is you're overwhelmed and you're burnt out, and just be careful with that. The first, I would say, when your life is falling apart, that you let it, but you don't, you know, fight where you can fight if you want to fight, but whatever's leaving, allow it to leave. And again, going back to what I was saying in the previous one, don't whitewash it. Don't do the thing of, right, oh, it's for my highest good, or it's this pain is going to teach me, or it's I'm a better person out of my suffering, whatever. Just see it as suffering and kind of bear it. There's a notion that when Jesus died, he goes to hell. He goes to hell for 3 days and then he rises. And one of the things that said, well, what was he doing in hell? And it was that he was witnessing all of it. Not trying to change it, not trying to save it, not trying to make it good, not trying to allow it, well, not probably, but just witnessing, bearing it, that this is the horrifying nature of it. So in that kind of way, it's, this is the horrifying nature of my life. It is falling apart. It's not going to last forever, because your life can't fall apart continuously. And just understand it and be it, and try to learn what you can from it. And if there's nothing to learn from it, if it's just a horrible thing, then, you know, bear it. And yeah, my life has fallen apart a number of times. It's horrible. It's just, and for everyone, I mean, I don't think anyone's unique in it. And when you're in the middle of it, I don't think there's any consolation that can be said. It just sucks, man. It just sucks. It will get better, or it will change. At the very least, I can't guarantee it'll get better. It will change. Your suffering will, at least on some level, be different suffering. But just try to bear it, not try to pretend it's not what it is. But also, don't get engulfed by it. Don't, you know, suffocate from it. Don't feel that it's a dark hole that you can't get out of, because it isn't going to last forever. It is something you will emerge from, definitely. And sometimes life falls apart. It's the nature of the place in which we find ourselves. If you find your life falling apart and you don't care, as I say, either you're overwhelmed or burnt out, or your life isn't what you wanted anyway and you're quite happy to let it all burn to the ground. But there is a kind of sentiment in it that I'm kind of feeling, that it's fuck it anyway, giving up, who cares, fuck everything, which you should look at, because you know, that's not good and not helpful. But apathy, like it's there, you know. It's something we all struggle with. It's very hard when you're continually knocked down to keep with the struggle, to keep going. But what else are we gonna do? You know, give up? Emilio, what's your thoughts on the Gallery of Magick? My thoughts on the Gallery of Magick is that Spud has definitively proven that Damon Brand is Dr. Stephen Skinner, not a medical doctor. If you haven't seen that podcast, it's quite a funny podcast, where Spud lays his thesis out before us all, and I believe him. Someone else has recently pointed out to me that Damon Albarn from Blur and Godzilla, Gorillaz, is also a likely candidate for Damon Brand, as there is handwriting that is very similar in sleeve notes and in one of the books, and there's a similar style and a similar background. That could be interesting if it was as well. I think Damon Brand's fine. I've read a couple of the books and they were good. They're good introductory books on the subject they're talking about. The Servitor book was really good. The Angels book is really good. It's probably not necessarily going to be your first book on magic, but it'll be your first book in that area. It'll be your first book on servitors, your first book on angels, your first book on wealth magic, job seeking, whatever is the ones. It takes an awful lot from Cobb, is that his name, from New Avatar Power, which is fine, you know. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants and all of those things. But yeah, fine, good, great. Not the greatest books in the world by any stretch, but yeah, and I've recommended them before to people. So why do I not want to give a full ringing endorsement to Damon Brand? I don't know enough about it. I've only read a couple of the books, and people in general have an issue around him. So he's fine. Yeah, if you like Damon Brand's books and Gallery of Magick, more power to you. So that is all of the questions. I hope you're all doing well. A couple of those questions would give me concern for you, and my thoughts and prayers are with you, and sending you all the good juju that I can. And I hope that the turbulence that we're feeling at the minute and the suffering for all of us lessens in some way, and we get a bit of respite between these massive world events. But of course, this is very much a Western perspective. There's been wars in other parts of the world intensely for the last 20 years, possibly thousands of years, but there's always been a war somewhere. So while it's just at, in a sense, our front door now, and we have to deal with it, it can feel more intense, even though on a global scale, it probably is always a bit like this, not to diminish what's going on, you know. Just trying to put it in somewhat of perspective to counter the kind of thing of thinking it's something new just because it's happening to me or happening near me even. It's not even happening to me. But the pandemic certainly happened to all of us, and I think we're all a bit burnt out, all a bit apathetic, all a bit overwhelmed. The main kind of feeling I get from people is overwhelmed and just too much. You know, climate change, pandemics, wars, cost of living, all of these things. So what my wish for you is that things settle down, even if it's only in your own private life on a micro level, and you get a bit of respite and a bit of rest and a bit of encouragement from the universe to keep going and to move towards your mountain. Whatever it is your goal is, or whatever it is that you're seeking. And I'm still, as even in my dark days, there's a feeling that even when it's falling apart, even when it's really not okay, that it's also okay. I can't really explain that without getting into without it sounding like spiritual bypassing, and that's not what it is. But because it's not okay, it's also something is okay. There's always something, always a part in you. Even when your world is falling apart, that is okay, and you can take refuge in that. So I hope you find your refuge place and your solace, and genuinely may your best days be ahead, and be well.